We are on our 6th week of our Practicing Kindness series. And I wanted to start today's class to introduce our 6th practice with a story. It's a short story called The Three Questions. So there was a very good king that ruled his kingdom very well, and he wanted to continue to rule his kingdom really well. So it occurred to him one day that if he could answer 3 questions of when the right time was to act, that who the most important person was, and what the most important thing was, that if he knew the answer to those questions, that he would always act wisely, that he would always do what was in the best interest of the kingdom. So he puts this out to the kingdom and the village, and if anyone can answer these 3 questions to the satisfaction of the king, that they will be handsomely rewarded. So many people come and they're offering all sorts of answers. So when is the best time to act? Many people put out these calendars and schedules and all these different planning ways to plan so that you would know when the best time to act always was. As to who was the most important person, people were saying all sorts of answers. Your advisors are the most important person. Your queen is the most important person. The priests are the most important people. And then as to what was the most important thing, again, he got this variety of answers. Science is the most important. Religion is the most important. Being skillful in warfare, that's the most important thing. So being very unsatisfied with all of these answers, he dismisses everyone. No one gets the reward. And he thinks to himself, he remembers there's a very wise old hermit that lives out in the forest that only gives advice to the common people. So the king thinks to himself, I'm going to dress up in commoner's clothing and I'm going to go and visit this hermit. I'm going to see if he can answer these 3 questions for me. So he takes just one of his guards with him. And when they get about a mile away from the hermit's hut, the king says to the guard, you stay here. Don't move. Don't leave this post until I come back. And then he goes out and he visits the hermit. And as he's coming up to the hermit's hut, he sees the hermit outside, this little old frail man, and he's out in his garden just digging his little garden beds. And the king, dressed as a commoner, goes up to him and he says, I have 3 questions I am hoping you can answer for me. When is the most important time to act? Who is the most important person? And what is the most important thing? And the hermit kind of looks up at him for a moment as if he's going to answer. And then he doesn't. And he just goes right back down into his digging. And he's struggling the whole time, being bent over. And the king, observing this after a few minutes, realizes just how much pain this guy is in. And he says, hand me the spade. Let me help. So the king's in there digging the garden beds out for the hermit. And a couple hours go by. The king says to the hermit, so, will you answer my questions for me? And just in that moment, the hermit says, wait, look. And this man comes running out of the forest and he's holding his abdomen because there's blood all over his abdomen. He's wounded. So the king and the hermit, they spring to action and they get to the man just before he falls to the ground. And they immediately start trying to stop the bleeding. And they're getting pails of water and they're trying to clean the wound. And this is taking hours. And just as the darkness starts to come, they get him stable. So the king carries him and takes him into the hermit's hut. And as he rests him on the floor, the king himself realizes how tired he is. And he lies down on the floor and he falls asleep and has his best night's sleep in forever. And when the king awakens, the stranger is staring at him. And the stranger says, can you please forgive me? The king looks at him. He says, I don't even know you. Why do I need to forgive you? He said, you see, I know you're the king. And several years ago, you killed my brother. And you took all of his land. And I vowed that I would kill you one day. And I heard that you were disguised coming out to the hermit yesterday. and I came out here to kill you. But I ran into your guard, and we had a fight, and I was wounded, but I was still able to get away. And you saved my life. And if you would forgive me, I would forever be your faithful subject." And the king thinks, of course I'll forgive you. I can turn this enemy into a friend, a subject, a loyal subject. Yes, I absolutely forgive you. Not only do I forgive you, I'm going to restore all of your brother's lands to you. So then the king gets up and realizes he probably needs to be on his way. And he turns to the hermit and he says, "Okay, one more time. Do you think you could answer these questions for me?" And the hermit says, "You have your answers. Yesterday, when you were standing there watching me painfully digging in the garden bed, you were present. I was the most important person. You were paying attention to me. And out of your kindness, the most important thing, you took the shovel out of my hand and you started doing the work. And because of that, you didn't go back out on the road and potentially get killed by this man. So it worked for you. It was in your favor. And then when this man comes rushing out of the forest wounded, we immediately acted in the present moment. He was the most important person. And kindness was the most important thing to save him. And look at what happened. You turned an enemy into a friend. If you always follow this advice, knowing that the most important time to act is always the present moment, that the most important person is always the person you are with, and the most important thing is always kindness. And if you do this, your kingdom will flourish, and you will be happy and at peace. And so the kingdom did this. He went off and he followed the advice, and the kingdom did flourish. So we know here that when is the time to act? When is the only time? The present moment. It's the only time we can act, is the present moment. And we know that kindness is the most important thing. We're on week 6 of 7 weeks of kindness. It is the most important thing. And the person we happen to be with, whoever we are with in that moment, is the most important person. And the way that we show someone they are the most important person, one of the ways that we can do this, is to give them our full attention, to really hear the person, to really see them with our eyes, to make them feel like they are important, that they matter, that they are seen. Because that is the most amazing feeling in the world, when someone gives us their full attention. It feels fantastic. I used to have a boss at Merrill Lynch many years ago, Paul Sullivan. If you're ever watching this recording, Paul Sullivan, he was the best boss in the world, because every time you ran into him, whether in the hallway or you go in his office, he gave you his full attention. He saw you. He made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. And it didn't matter whether he agreed to what you wanted, or if he disagreed, if he was giving you bad news. Because he gave you his attention, his full attention, you always felt good. You felt seen. You felt heard. It's one of the most amazing feelings in the world. And then I had this other boss where every time I'd go into his office, where we would have computer screens all on our desk, stock tickers going across, he would never look up from his computer. The whole time you're talking, he's just staring at his computer screen. And it was the most deflating conversation. You felt so empty, so insignificant, that you didn't matter enough to even look up for a moment. And sadly, I think the Paul Sullivans of the world are a little bit rare. I think it's more the latter, where people aren't giving us their attention. And I know in all of the retreats that I have led in workshops, it inevitably seems to come up, or mostly come up, where someone will raise their hand and they'll say, it really hurts me when my partner doesn't listen to me, or when someone dismisses my ideas. And then someone else's hand goes up. I feel the same thing. I have this group of friends, and I feel like every time I go to speak, no one cares. No one wants to hear my opinions, and I'm just talked all over. And it's so painful. And hands just keep going up with this same thing. People saying how painful it is to not be seen, to not be heard. And I don't think, or I think it's hard to not take it personally. It's really hard. And yet I would say that it's all very unconscious behavior, that everyone is just walking around. Most of the people on this planet are walking around just so lost in their own fears and desires and worries and their own story, right? That story becomes the most important thing in the world. And it's really hard to see beyond that story to even the person in front of us, to see them as more important, because the story always seems more important than what's happening in front of us. And it is painful. And we are experiencing this almost epidemic proportion of disconnection, of isolation, of loneliness. And loneliness not meaning like being off in a remote part of Mexico or being off in on the Antarctic or something, right? Lonely, being surrounded by people. And yet people having this ache, this emptiness, this loneliness inside, because they're not seen, because they're not heard, because people aren't giving their attention to them. And connection for us as humans is vital. We need connection to thrive, to feel safe, to feel whole. We need to give each other our attention. And that is our practice for this week. The kindness of giving our attention to others, of really seeing and hearing and making the person we're with, feel seen and heard, making them feel as though they are the most important person in the world. There's no greater gift of kindness, or it's one of the greatest gifts, I should say. I think I say this on every kindness class. It's one of the greatest gifts of kindness that we can give to another person. To help them feel like they're seen and heard, to give them our attention. It costs us nothing, and it means everything to them. In Maya Angelou's poem, and I'm going to paraphrase this, I think I'm paraphrasing it. You will forget what others did, you will forget what others said, but you will not forget how they made you feel. And I think about that with Paul Sullivan, that I talk about him. He was my boss over 20 years ago, and I still remember how he made me feel just by giving me his attention. So our job, our practice in giving our attention to others, is the kindness of giving our attention to others, is to remember the story. Remember the 3 questions, right? Now is always the most important time to act. It's the only time we can act. Who you are with is the most important person. And the most important thing is kindness. And the way that we can express this is simply by giving our attention to that person. We are being kind. We are being present. If we listen more and speak less, because so much of it, again, we're so caught up in our own things. Everyone wants to get their story out, their thoughts out, right? We're talking over each other so much of the time. We're all doing it, right? We're all doing it. I do it too, right? We're all doing it. We're trying to bring more awareness to this, so we're not doing it. right? So, but when we're talking all over each other, wanting the attention, but nobody giving the attention, like someone has to break this cycle. So let's be the one to break this cycle, to stop and listen. Let the other person speak. Really hear what they're saying. Don't be so concerned with how we look or what are we saying or do we look smart or clever, right? That's just my story again, right? So instead, dropping that and really focusing our attention on the other person, you will feel better too. There's less pressure on us to be this, kind of the way we imagine ourselves to have to be in some conversation. We're just focusing on the other person. So our practice is giving our attention to others. And it is our big practice for those of you that have been coming on for each week. So we have kind of a big circle in the middle. This is our practice this week, giving our attention, our full attention to others. But then we still have the little spokes with the little circles, all the other practices we've been doing. We're still doing those. Random acts of kindness, self-compassion, kindness for our future self, the kindness in not judging others, and the wisdom of kindness. The wisdom of kindness, making sure that we are using that in our practice this week, in all of our practices, because there are going to be times when you're running late and maybe you've had to pop into the store quickly to pick something up on your way somewhere, and you do see someone and you think, oh, I'm trying to practice giving my attention this week to others and that they're the most important person and to listen more and to speak less. But if I don't get out of here quickly, like I'm going to be late and people are going to be upset with me. And so in that moment, to remember the wisdom of kindness, it's okay to say to that person, hey, I'm so glad I saw you right now. I do not have a moment to spare, though. I am so late, right? But I'm so glad I saw you. I hope you are well. We'll catch up soon. Something, whatever it is. For that 30 seconds or 15 seconds it takes you to say something to that person, they are the most important person. Make sure they feel it, right? Not this, oh, I got to get out of here, but really kind of getting it across to them how important they are. But man, I also got to go, right? To remember, this is a practice. It has to be realistic. All of our practices have to be realistic. There are going to be times you're having a conversation and something, or you start the conversation because you just had some good news. You just can't help yourself. You want to share that news. You want to get it out. Like, that's okay, right? I'm not saying we walk around with our mouth taped and that we don't have any wisdom here, right? We've got to make this practical. There will be times when maybe we did talk over someone. That's okay too. Remember our self-compassion practice. Oh, sweetheart, not your best moment there, right? Have some remorse. Remorse is okay. Guilt is not, right? Yeah, I could do a little better next time. Okay. If we can be paying attention 50% more of the time than we are paying now, what a beautiful gift. What a beautiful gift we are giving to other people. So to remember in our practice, how we do our practice here for the kindness practices, our intention, right? First thing in the morning, we wake up, place our hands over our heart, and we set our intention to give the gift of kindness, of giving our attention during the day. So thinking about visualizing, visualizing some of the situations, the meetings or appointments or things that you know that you're going to interact with other people, your partner, your children, your pets, right? And imagine giving them all your attention and just how good they feel because you gave them all your attention, right? How important they feel. One of the best gifts we can give to someone. So we imagine it first, right? We really get for those of you that came to the class where we were talking about the neurotransmitters, you get those flowing because it's a gift of kindness, right? You feel good about it. And then you go out in the day and you follow through, you have the action of it. Not always, we're going to forget, right? We don't change on a dime. No one changes on a dime. We're trying to bring more awareness to this. We're trying to look at this through the lens of kindness, because looking at it through the lens of kindness has an amazing way of really shifting our perspective on these things. And to forgive ourselves when, hey, I had a moment, right? Again, that self-compassion. It's okay, sweetheart, you had a moment. better luck next time. Let's see how we go. No beating ourselves up for it. So we go out through the day and we have the action of giving others our attention. And notice how you feel as well. Again, it takes that pressure off us. We're so in our story as they're in their story, like it's painful. So we drop our story, right? Because we're present. We're focused on someone else, not the little me inside, the little me that's never satisfied, right? So we're focused on someone else. It feels a lot better, right? And then at the end of the day, the reflection, healthy reflection on the times when you executed well, right? Yeah, I gave my attention to that person at lunch, and man, it felt good. Feel what you're feeling, what you think they were feeling in their heart. Feel that sense of connection, right? Because that's where it's coming from. Yeah, they felt good. Not I'm a good person, right? That's just building into our story again. We don't want that. But the connection, man, made that person feel good. I made my child feel good. I stopped what I was doing because they were in front of me. They were the most important thing. I made my partner feel good. I stopped what I was doing and I looked at them and I gave them my full attention because they are the most important person. They were in front of me in that moment and they are the most important person, right? Doing this is a beautiful, beautiful act of kindness. And I just want to finish by reading, and I'm going to get to the questions in just a moment. So I just want to read a poem by the Persian poet and mystic Hafez. And it goes, admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, love me. Of course, you do not do this out loud, otherwise someone would call the cops. Still, though, think about this great pull in us to connect. Why not become the one who lives with a full moon in each eye, that is always saying with that sweet moon language what every other eye in this world is dying to hear? Right? How do we do this? We give them our attention. You look someone in the eye, you hear them. You make them feel seen and heard. Whoever is in front of you is the most important person. Give them the gift of kindness by giving our attention to them in this moment. This is how we connect with others. This is how we connect with ourselves. Such a beautiful way to go through life. And you will never regret. You'll never regret giving another being your attention, making them feel like they're important. It is a beautiful act of kindness.